Rhea Ripley versus Jade Cargill for the WWE Women's Championship has only just been announced, and it's already making the Liv Morgan versus Stephanie Vaquer feud look lifeless by comparison. Almost immediately after Rhea won the Women's Elimination Chamber match, the two started going at each other on social media. Back and forth shots, character-driven jabs, just enough ambiguity to blur the line between kayfabe and reality. And we haven't even made it to Monday Night Raw yet. Their feud already feels hot, fresh, and flexible, like it can go in multiple directions without collapsing underneath its own weight. Do they start beating the hell out of each other almost immediately? Does Io Sky get pulled into it? Does Jade form her own baddie section to counter Rhea's dominance? The point is, the options are open, and that's what makes the story feel alive. Now let's look at Liv Morgan versus Stephanie Vaquer. Despite having a full month's head start, that feud still hasn't felt like it's actually begun. Yes, Liv took her time choosing her WrestleMania opponent, and yes, she attacked Stephanie twice. On paper, that should have been enough to generate heat, but it wasn't. Dominic Mysterio was pulled in, not to deepen the story, but to act as a shortcut. A way to manufacture interest without building it. He acted as Stephanie's translator. He absorbed the crowd's attention, and for a moment, the feud felt like it had life. But the second Dominic stepped back, the audience did too. Because the issue wasn't Dom's presence, it was the lack of structure underneath him. And that brings us to Raquel Rodriguez. Raquel was quietly building something with Stephanie. The tension gave Stephanie edge, and it gave Raquel a reason to exist beyond being someone's backup. But after Liv eliminated Raquel at the Royal Rumble, that thread was dropped entirely. Raquel was pushed back into silence, back into bodyguard mode, back into a role where she isn't allowed to react, speak, or meaningfully compete. And that's a mistake because Raquel is the missing connective tissue in this feud. She has history with Liv, she already had friction with Stephanie, and her presence could have added layers instead of noise. Instead, we got none of it. Liv has attacked Stephanie twice. Stephanie supposedly made Liv cry, and yet nothing escalated. No social media back and forth, no Raquel complicating the dynamic, no sense that either woman is adapting or learning. Just Liv cackling, Dominic translating, and Stephanie being positioned as naive instead of dangerous. Meanwhile, Rhea and Jade are doing all the things this feud isn't. They're active, they're confrontational, they're driving the story by themselves. WrestleMania is roughly 50 days away. There is still time for Liv and Stephanie to shift into a higher gear, but it has to start now. Stop leaning on Dominic to create interest. Let Raquel have opinions and agency. Let Stephanie be smart instead of clueless. Because WrestleMania main events are decided by time, they're decided by momentum. And right now, it isn't Liv Morgan and Stephanie Vaquer main eventing night 1. It's Rhea Ripley and Jade Cargill.